What you're seeing now is the only door in the game that can be entered without it actually opening. Unlike all the other doors in the game that are either closed or open normally when you walk into them, here you just magically go through it. Those of you who've played this game even casually might already know what's behind this door, and up that ladder. But what is it actually? What does it really mean? Better yet, what does any of it mean? This city, which seems to be almost cursed. A place that cannot be escaped, where history repeats itself, where pets and families are not welcome. Playgrounds are rusting away, and children are merely referenced only in the darkest ways. What depravity is lurking just a little beyond the surface? What warnings were we given about what was to happen? And what the hell is this place? It's hard to know exactly where to begin with a video like this. GTA 4 is arguably the darkest, most disturbing GTA title as it is. It's not just the story, which deals with themes that are much more serious and personal than the previous games, CJ's mom accepted. Nor is it the many heinous things you can get away with in this virtual world. But it's the whole atmosphere itself. It's hostile, grim, and unwelcoming. Somewhere you'd never want to actually live. This is in stark contrast to the quite vibrant and colourful world of San Andreas, with all of its natural beauty too. Vice City also looked much warmer and more like a place where somebody might want to actually be. Liberty City, on the other hand, is far from that. Despite all of its map changes from GTA 3, however Liberty City is designed, it has a similar kind of messed up atmosphere to me. And there are a few things that we saw in GTA 3 that were definitely turned up a notch in GTA 4. There are just too many aspects of this game that stand out as unsettling. After first playing GTA 4 shortly after its release, I'm still left puzzled and disturbed by so much of it. And in this video, I'm going to try and show every one of these details that I find unsettling. What happens in the main story has probably already been discussed enough, but I'll highlight some of the creepier moments you might have missed, and the darkest side missions and strangers you can encounter. I'll also focus on the many oddities of Liberty City itself, and things that are either hidden and unlikely for you to experience on a casual playthrough, as well as those things which are just unexplained, and more or less left up to us to figure out. And rest assured, I'll be going deep into the eeriest Easter eggs, the bizarre in-game internet, and even into the game files themselves to see what disturbing unused content exists, to try and make sense of it all and see if this can give us any more of an understanding, which isn't too likely. Throughout this video, I'm going to attempt to categorize these different details, but there will definitely be quite a bit of overlap, so it's a bit of a challenge. You can refer to the timestamps and chapters if you're more interested in a certain part of the game. Right at the beginning of the game, we are introduced to our protagonist, Niko Bellic, who's illegally coming into the city by boat. We get a view of Liberty City as the boat is coming in, and the Statue of Happiness has its back to Niko. This is a bad omen right from the start, and a pretty telling warning of what is to come later, but we'll discuss the statue more elsewhere in the video. Niko talks to fellow migrant Hassan about coming to the country. This is where a pretty major theme of the American dream is brought up, with Hassan talking about the land of opportunity and living the dream. Niko tells Hassan that he was attracted to coming here because of his cousin Roman's emails, where he's ostensibly living this dream. He then says, "After the war finished, I couldn't get a job. Nobody could. So I did some dumb things and got involved with some idiots." Niko kind of makes light of his past here and glosses over some important details, for what will become obvious reasons. Those of you old enough might remember Niko making more of an honest admission in the game's first trailer back in 2007, where Niko can be heard narrating over these cinematic time-lapse shots of the city, saying, "Life is complicated. I killed people, smuggled people, sold people. Perhaps here things will be different." Later in the actual game story, there are a few more instances which talk about Niko's past. First, in the mission where Dimitri turns on Niko and teams up with Ray Bulgarin, Dimitri reminds Niko of his former job in the Mediterranean smuggling people.
"And you used to work the coast in the Mediterranean, smuggling people into Italy."
"I don't know what you're talking about."
"But you messed up."
Niko denies any knowledge of this, but once confronted by Bulgarin, he admits that he was busted doing it and that it wasn't him who screwed up.
"We were busted a mile off the coast. I had to swim for my life. I don't know what happened. I nearly drowned."
My heart is bleeding.
"I did my best! I didn't fuck up!"
Murder and human trafficking are among the worst things somebody can do, and in so many situations in the story, Niko seems to be a little too comfortable and in control, as if he has prior experience. One such part is the mission where you have to drop Manny and his cameraman off for a doctor's appointment, after Elizabeta gets a bit fed up with them. Niko seems totally in control and has no issues transporting the bodies to the doctor, with no questions asked. There's even a series of disturbing yet pretty funny remarks that Niko makes if the trunk of the car opens, leaving the bodies exposed to the public.
Oops, we nearly lost you two. Shit, were you guys trying to make a break for it? I wouldn't want the cops seeing you guys. Hey, aren't you that guy from the TV? I can't believe I got the genuine celebrity in the back of my car. Hell, at least you'll live on through your documentary.
Niko's twisted humor in these comments he makes to himself make it seem like this is something Niko might have done before. Maybe even more than once. Once the bodies are transported to the doctor for organ harvesting, the doctor asks Niko a question and receives a pretty blunt reply.
No one wants a liver if it's riddled with tumors, huh? Know what I mean?
No.
Since we know Niko is a human trafficker, and that he doesn't immediately admit to things he's done in the past, coupled with his ability to casually get the job done, it makes me wonder if his situation with Manny wasn't his first time illegally harvesting organs of a deceased. This mission is also one of the many throwbacks to GTA 3, which I'll discuss in the video, but it's so much more disturbing in this context, as GTA 3 dealt with a mafia member, and here we're literally sending two murdered people to have their organs harvested. One being a cameraman who at least wasn't as much of an annoying wanker as Manny. Another moment from the game that alludes to Niko's dark past is from the mission That Special Someone. When Niko is confronting Darko Brevic for his betrayal years prior during the war, which led to Niko losing many of his childhood friends, Niko asks Darko how much he was paid to give up the location of his friends, and when he gets the answer of $1,000, which leaves him in disbelief, Darko then asks Niko plainly, "How much do you charge to kill someone?" To which Niko has no direct answer. Presumably, Darko hasn't seen or heard about Niko for many years, maybe even since his days in the war. So how does he seem to know all about Niko's contract killing and murdering? The most logical explanation is that murder for hire has been Niko's bread and butter for a long time, way before he ever came to Liberty City where he merely continued it. In a mission that forces you to stalk someone, Niko makes a rather alarming remark which indicates he's probably a little too familiar with this activity too.
You know, when I was stalking this girl in Europe, I found that 2 car lengths was the best distance. It's 2 car lengths, right? That's how far you stay behind the woman when you're harassing her? Apparently, the mob teaches people to stay 2 car lengths behind the target.
Then we have the insanely messed up situation of Niko responding to a car advertisement online under the pretense of making contact with the mob boss daughter selling it, then pretending to test drive the car so he can kidnap the poor lady, who is then later tied up, placed in the trunk of a car, forced to sit in a very unkept apartment, slapped by Niko and forced to look at the camera, while he takes a photo to send to her father so that she can be traded for diamonds. I know she's the daughter of a mob boss, but even with the context, this part of the game is pretty shocking to look back on. So yeah, Niko is not really a great person, if that wasn't already obvious. However, we're given a lot of interesting choices throughout the game that allow Niko, perhaps in some small way, to redeem himself, or at least make an effort to be less of a terrible person. He also does actually possess a conscience. For example, after the mission where you kidnap Gracie Ancelotti, if you randomly call Roman, Niko talks about feeling guilty for doing it.
That's what I thought. I've had to kidnap this girl and she's a fucking nightmare.
Shame on you, Niko Bellic. You should know better than this. Who is she? What'd you take her for?
I'm working with that Irish family. She's some mobster's daughter, Gracie Ancelotti.
So there's that. There are these 2 central reasons behind why Niko has come to Liberty City, with one being that he was seduced by the American dream as presented by Roman, and wants to come here to genuinely have a better life, whilst the other, perhaps more truthful reason, is that he's here for revenge at all costs. The choices in the game seem to boil down to these 2 conflicting reasons, allowing us to either minimize the evil and move towards a better life, or to continue on the dark path that Niko has been on for a long time. As mentioned, the player is given a number of choices throughout the main story that have some fairly real consequences. Typically, we're given the choice to either execute someone or let them go, which tends to mean you'll encounter them as a stranger later in the game. Here, I'll cover some of the choices that you can make that aren't necessarily part of the main story, but are interesting details nonetheless. I'll also explore some choices that are real, but kind of hidden. There's so much dialogue and variations of dialogue in the game that it's hard to come close to hearing all of it, unless you really just try to fail each mission in every possible way. One of the more interesting phone calls that can happen in the game comes pretty early. If you act like a time traveler and decide to save yourself a lot of trouble, you can do away with Dimitri at the first convenient opportunity. If you do that, then Niko makes the following phone call to Faustin.
I got some bad news, Mr. Faustin. Dimitri's gone.
Dimitri dead? How? This is impossible. Come see me and explain.
Of course, when you go back to Faustin's house, Dimitri is still there, and the mission just repeats as normal. An interesting detail I've noticed though, is that if you kill your friend in a mission and restart enough times, instead of the default or the alternative dialogue that plays, they'll just act uncomfortable and suggest you listen to the radio, as if they remember what happened last time.
I'm all talked out, homie. Let's have some music. Can we just chill and listen to music? Fuck, man, you hit him. Yo, don't drive like a bitch, punk!
Some more interesting dialogue I found was during the I'll Take Her mission, where Niko has to go into the safe house where Gracie Ancelotti is held to take a picture of her, which is really a scene straight from the Silence of the Lambs. If you go in and kill Gracie, Niko calls Paki.
Shit, man. I saw her and I got the rage. I killed Grace.
You dumb chump! She was my meal ticket. Jerry ain't gonna be happy with you. You're lucky he's in prison.
Similarly, killing Gordon instead gives this conversation.
I need to learn to control myself. Gordon's dead.
Jesus, Niko, what's wrong with you? You need to get some counseling or something because you're out of control. I'll talk to you later.
The last dialogue is quite fascinating because it suggests Niko went into the safe house and was so disgusted with what he saw that he decided to end Gordon, implying some kind of morality and emotional reaction from Niko. It really is phenomenal writing. In other missions, if certain characters die, for example during a heist, then there'll typically be some dialogue acknowledging who was killed. But on the Waste Not Want Nots mission, if both Michael and Paki die, then Niko simply drops Gordon off and no words are exchanged whatsoever. There's something a little eerie about that, but maybe the developers or writers just didn't plan for that possibility, as two characters dying represents quite a huge screw-up on your part. Aside from interesting mission failure dialogue, there are also some messages that the game gives the player if you choose to do something really insane or evil, like at the first clothes shop you unlock in the game, the Russian shop. I randomly drove inside and decommissioned the nice lady running the store. Then this message popped up in the corner of the screen, urging me to control myself. It's pretty funny, but also apparent that they thought about how they can maybe prevent the player from just going on endless rampages by making them feel judged for acting like a psycho. Speaking of messages, on one of the missions where Roman gets kidnapped and you have to save him, Dimitri texts you a photo of Roman tied up and being held hostage. It's easy to miss, since you might just put the phone down and try to get to Roman as soon as possible. But if you choose to call Dimitri after receiving the text, Niko makes the following threat to him.
I got your message, Dimitri, you piece of shit. You're a dead man. A dead man. Before you die, I'm going to cut your face off. Then I'm going to hang it on my wall to remind me what a lying, cheating, treacherous scumbag looks like. Goodbye, friend.
Dimitri has no response and the call is simply disconnected. The imagery alone is very disturbing, as we know Niko isn't the kind of person who would make a threat and not follow through on it. Maybe the most well-known hidden choice is in the mission Blood Brothers, where Niko is given the choice to either assassinate corrupt cop Francis or his very troubled brother Derrick. Most players will probably just make the decision without much deliberation, as you don't have much time to take the shot, and you would have probably already made up your mind on which brother you want to keep around by this point. However, if you call Francis whilst on the rooftop and ready to take the shot, the result is quite interesting. He picks up the phone and discreetly offers you a raise in order to get the job done.
Just a second here, Derrick. I gotta speak to one of the sergeants. Hey, what's the problem? I thought you were gonna make something happen for me.
I'm not so sure about it.
What's gonna make you sure? You want me to give you a raise?
Which you can either accept or decline.
That might help.
All right then. Call it a bonus. Make this happen.
Accepting it and killing Derrick gives you significantly more cash as a reward. This choice really cements Niko as a cold-blooded killer with no conscience, who only cares about the money. There are many other similar decisions in the story, but none of them have this sort of secret decision to be even more evil. One mission in the game, Wrong is Right, given by United Liberty Paper, perhaps secretly allows the player to be a better person. This mission captures a lot of the themes that are discussed in this video. We've got this sense that Niko cannot escape his dark past even in a new country.
And hey, welcome to America. Pascal Stara Dejeva.
Bushka.
There's this conflict and confusion between what's right and what's wrong. Oleg Minkov is one of the few characters that you encounter that has practically no information about them anywhere, including the Liberty Police website, which usually lists details about all suspected criminals in the game. Minkov either isn't a criminal, or his crimes are top secret, and a matter of national security. All we know is that Minkov has information that has got some very powerful people really worried, and now they want to shut him up. This is made evident by his emails. Ironically, one of his friends even tries to assure him that no one is after him, and that he's just being paranoid, which reminds me of the lyrics to a Nirvana song. Minkov's house is pretty sketchy. He seems to have grabbed some things and fled in a hurry. The rug looks odd, as if something is bulging from underneath it. It also appears as though he's recently pried out something that was in a hidden compartment under the floorboards of his house. Was it a bug or a listening device put there by the government? Was it where Minkov was keeping his dossier of top secret files? The files that have the information that could bring down some bad and powerful people? Niko clearly feels quite uneasy about killing Minkov. Maybe he gets the sense that Minkov is perhaps not a bad guy, unlike the other people he's had to kill up until this point. This is where we get to the possibly hidden choice. You have to locate Minkov, chase and finally eliminate him. Normally you'd keep shooting at him in his car until he's done, and that ends the mission successfully. Curiously though, if you just shoot Minkov's vehicle until it sets on fire, he'll jump out and actually survive. This completes the mission and triggers the same dialogue with UL Paper, where Niko states he's killed Minkov, yet he clearly hasn't. You can then continue to follow Minkov, and he even talks and interacts with the player. Perhaps it's a glitch, but maybe this really is a hidden choice that you can make to spare someone who isn't bad after all, prompting Niko to simply lie to UL Paper. Like any good novel or well-crafted story, you see a lot of foreshadowing of the terrible things to come later. Sometimes these can be really obvious and in your face, but others are a lot more subtle and easy to miss the first time around. On a second playthrough, it's easier to catch the warnings as you already know what's ahead. The biggest example of foreshadowing that I can think of is in the mission where you are tricked into killing Mikhail Faustin for Dmitri. Up to this point, Dmitri seems like one of the most reasonable people you encounter. He presents himself as calm and rational, and also appears to have Niko's back. In contrast, Faustin is the hot-headed psycho who's only too quick to resort to murder to solve all his problems. As it turned out though, Faustin is a man of principles, albeit very questionable ones. He's also actually pretty loyal, in retrospect. Meanwhile, in the end, Dmitri is revealed to have absolutely no loyalty, and only looks out for his own interests, screwing basically everyone else in the process. There are some early hints and signs as to his true nature, and Dmitri shows himself to be a little more callous as time goes by, but it's not exactly spelled out for us until it's far too late. We're given hints to this in this mission cutscene, but it's brushed off as Faustin's paranoia.
It works.
Yes, but you've angered the wrong people.
I've angered people. Me? Not we. Strange. When I give out the money, it's us. When I have to push people, it's me. All alone. Don't think I cannot see through you. After all we've done together.
You're getting delusional.
When you are manipulated by Dmitri into getting Faustin out of the way, and you make your way over to Perestroika to confront him, Faustin alludes more to Dmitri's deceptive and disloyal nature by telling Niko it was Dmitri who wanted him dead, and it was Faustin who saved him. But Niko is too dead set on doing the job by this stage. You then have to fight off his guards and chase him. If you were distracted by all the gunshots and did away with him quickly, it's pretty easy to miss this part of the game's dialogue. Once Faustin is cornered on the rooftop, he tells Niko exactly what's going to happen later on.
Dimitri turned on me, not the other way around.
America made him greedy. Dimitri will tell you as well. He shall discover this. I am a man of convictions. I have only done what I believe. None of you will survive this country without me. This American greed takes everyone. It's like a disease.
And again, we see this theme of the American dream being a lie, with Faustin warning Niko that American greed is the root cause of all of this. Faustin didn't just warn us about Dimitri, but also about this place that seems to cause people to act in these evil, treacherous ways. And he wasn't lying. The next major example of foreshadowing is straight after in the story, in the mission Roman Sorrow. After everything going pear-shaped, with Dimitri reintroducing Niko to his old pal Bulgarin, and completely turning on and ambushing him, Niko finds Roman hiding in the trunk of the car, and they decide to grab their things and head to an apartment in another part of the city. They then find both the apartment and the taxi company being burned to the ground. During the journey, Roman shares a dream that he had with Niko.
I was thinking about getting out of the cab business. Last night I had a dream.
Really?
Yes. You and I had a place of our own. A place where people come to eat and relax. Classy place. None of this fast food diner bullshit. We own a real restaurant. Tavern. It's a place of distinction, you know?
I can't see myself settling down.
Not now, but in the dream you've met the right woman. She's beautiful, pure like my Mallory. In the dream, Mallory and me are married and everything is perfect. This could be the start of that. A fresh beginning.
Although at this point in the game, there's no real reason to think this dream could actually come true. By almost the end of the story, this is exactly the direction it goes in, and it seems like it might actually come true after all. Roman does get married, and Niko does indeed find a decent person that he could be with. Tragically though, there is no possible ending to the story that sees this dream come to fruition, as either Roman or Kate must die by the end. The way that Roman shares his hopes and dreams about this idealistic future, and then immediately sees the dream shattered as he realizes his engagement ring is lost in the fire, feels like a warning to us that this dream that he has of a better life and future will also go down in flames by the end, which it absolutely does. Another little example of foreshadowing is during a mission where Niko and Playboy go to meet with someone to make a drug deal. Playboy describes the man they're going to meet to Niko.
Buyer is some Asian dude called Charlie.
To which Niko replies,
Like in Vietnam.
Just like the movies, money.
For anyone unaware of the history here, during the Vietnam War, Viet Cong soldiers were referred to using the NATO phonetic alphabet as Victor Charlie, Victor Charlie being code for Viet Cong. This was then abbreviated to Charlie. Since the Viet Cong employed many surprise traps and different methods of preemptively attacking US soldiers, this makes Niko's comment pretty prophetic, since the drug deal was actually all an elaborate trap, which Niko and Playboy had to fight themselves out of.
The deal didn't go so good. Charlie was an undercover cop. I think the feds have Playboy.
The last example of foreshadowing I'll discuss is actually from the Ballad of Gay Tony DLC, rather than the base game. In the opening sequence of GTA 4, this is the first time we are shown a character whose name we never find out, and is only referred to as the Cook. He can be seen concealing diamonds in some cake mix, in order to deliver them from the platypus. In the Ballad of Gay Tony, the Cook becomes a much more significant figure, and takes part in a few important meetings and exchanges in relation to the diamonds, which end up becoming a massive headache for everyone in the story, aside from one lucky homeless guy at the end, who I'm thinking we'll get to encounter in GTA 6. Just throwing that out there. Long story short, the Cook meets a pretty grisly end, as he's ultimately blamed by Bulgarin for the missing or stolen diamonds. This part of the game really reminds me of that one Morgan Freeman, Brad Pitt and Kevin Spacey movie, where they have to deal with a rather similar box in a similar situation. Bulgarin guides Lewis to open the box, where the Cook's severed head is found. Part of what makes this scene disturbing is the fact that in GTA 4 there is really no gore compared to other GTA games. You never really see any severed body parts, as it were. Now you might be thinking, where's the hidden detail? Where's the foreshadowing? It's quite subtle, but I'll let you listen to part of a conversation that Tony has with the Cook regarding the diamonds in an earlier mission cutscene.
Yeah, all right, this is them.
These are great. They're great. But, 2 million? You had your head in the oven?
Mr. Tony, I have what I tell you, perfect clarity.
I get the sense that the writers left that sick little reference there, and they probably got a kick out of it. You would definitely not think twice about it in the first playthrough, but playing again after knowing that his head actually ends up in a cake box, there's no way this dialogue wasn't intentional. Elizabeta is an important character once Niko and Roman flee from Bohan to Broker, after that whole debacle with Dimitri. She's a good friend of Mallory's, and she sets Niko to work on some drug deals that all go predictably badly. In the main story, the last time we hear from her is when she's overcome with paranoia and has the feds closing in on her shortly before getting sentenced. Before this, we get to see firsthand how impulsive and wild she can be. She also has immediate access to a doctor who illegally harvests people's organs, which is more than concerning all by itself. But taking a bit of a closer look at her, we find out some more pretty dark stuff. On the Liberty Police database, we can see her previous convictions in criminal history. One in particular stands out, and that's the fact she committed a certain kind of criminal act that was either on a minor or considered minor. And it doesn't end there. In the audio files for the game, we can see an unused phone call that Elizabeta makes to Niko after she gets sent to prison.
Niko, you there? You there? But there are about 100 cops listening to this shit and you can't even hear me. Fucking prison payphones. Niko?
I'm here, Elizabeta. I was sorry to hear you got in trouble.
I got what I deserved. Anyways, the cat ain't so bad. I got a nice little cellmate. She's in on a trafficking beef. We'll keep each other company for the next 5 years, huh? Woo! Well, have fun on the outside, Niko.
As you can hear, she sounds a little too enthusiastic about her new cellmate. In light of what we've learned about her on the police database, this phone call, which was never actually used in the final cut of the game, becomes all the more unsettling. Even her other interactions in the cutscenes can now be viewed in a more unnerving way. This is yet another bit of disturbing lore that they threw into the game for anyone who took the time to just look. Whilst the real black sheep of the McCreary family is Francis, Derrick is presented as a very troubled individual, whose habits and problems are of great concern to the other brothers, with Packy making a little too many jokes about it.
Hit the needle on the old head there, did I, Derrick?
It's clear that Derrick is battling some serious demons. In the opening of the Free Leaf Clover mission, Niko is introduced to Derrick by Packy, who mentions he's just returned from Ireland and was involved in the struggle over there.
Derrick and Gerald.
Hi.
Derrick has just returned to the family fold after a good few years in the old country, involved in the struggle. Sort of like you, I'd imagine.
Pretty quickly after this, it's made clear that Derrick knows a very alarming amount about explosives and bombs.
I got enough PE4 here to get through anything they throw at us.
PE4? I never heard of that. It's some limey name for C4 that Derrick here picked up over there.
I ain't having this argument with you, Patrick. Safe to say, what we're using is controllable enough to go through any vault door without incinerating whatever's inside. Not gonna leave much residue on the notes either, so they should be washable.
He makes the following heist possible as his expertise is used to blow off the vault doors. Later on, we encounter Derrick, who is strung out on a random public bench, overcome with paranoia and, by the looks of it, regret. He sends Niko on a few insane missions to basically get rid of those he thinks are going to bring him down, or share information about him, with one individual being from Ireland. Once more, everything is made a bit clearer when you go into the police database and view Derrick's record. While it's not clear what he got in trouble for in Ireland, it seems that politically motivated violence is something he may not be a stranger to, along with the use of explosives. He's gotten into trouble a fair few times during particular years known for being quite noteworthy in Irish history, relating to a certain group that has been classified as a terrorist organization for their use of violence and specifically for bombings. Again, it's not made clear whether those things happened in Liberty City or in Ireland, but it is stated that he was arrested in Ireland. Aside from that, we also see that he's acted as a police informant and has given information that led to some high-profile convictions, for what it's not clearly stated. Like everything else in the GTA universe, this connection to something real is obviously entirely coincidental. But it makes you wonder, what has he done that's so bad to make him this forthcoming to the cops in exchange for leniency? What real demons is Derrick battling? What's turned him into this drug-addicted, broken person who lays around and just wants to escape? Always paranoid of others, particularly those he knew in Ireland, talking too much. This is probably the most disturbing bit of information that is shared throughout the whole story, and is only revealed after you go on a certain number of tedious dates with Kate. The first time I played this game, I don't think I even bothered to call Kate when prompted to by Packy, so I think quite a lot of other players may have completely missed this. You can complete the whole game to 100% without ever needing to hear it. On each date, a little more personal information gets revealed. The whole time there's this bond growing between Niko and Kate. They open up to each other more, and Niko talks about Roman's mother in a really positive light.
My mother is one of life's victims. I was mostly raised by Roman's mother. She was great, an amazing person. When the war came, she saved up all her money and sent Roman here.
After a certain point, Niko drops this.
What was the war like?
It was great. You got to see people turn into animals and your close friends die.
Sorry, I knew it was a dumb question. It's just I hoped it wasn't so awful for you.
No. It was seeing your home destroyed. Seeing members of your family die. My aunt, the Roman's mother, she was raped and murdered. I found her. Roman does not know. He thought she died in a house fire.
It comes as a massive shock, especially considering that Roman still has absolutely no idea. And perhaps Roman will never find out the truth, as at the end of the game he either dies without finding this out, or Kate dies, making it so that, in a way, the truth dies with her. In this section of the video, I'll address the actual map of Liberty City. Whilst the map of GTA San Andreas was significantly larger than that of GTA 4, the sheer level of detail that went into the design of Liberty City here was unlike anything we'd really seen before in a modern open-world game. It's like every street, set of stairs, and building has character and tells a story. And I think the story that these places tell, in large part, is quite a dark one. Before I go over the actual city though, I first want to spend some time to talk about one probably really obvious but still creepy fact, which is that there is no escape from the city. Once you're in, there's no way out.
You leaving Liberty City?
How could I leave Liberty City? There's nowhere else to go.
Of course, open world games tend to have pretty rigid limits on the map, and inevitably you'll run into some invisible wall or boundary that prevents you from going any farther. What makes it creepy to me is the way that GTA 4 handles this. Unlike in GTA 3, where there's a very clear Truman Show style wall that you hit and can't go past. In GTA 4, it seems that you just keep moving away from the map forever and ever. In my attempts to get as far away from the city as possible, I found that it always took an equal amount of time to come back. This is a bit messed up, because it does give you the impression that you might actually be going somewhere, that you're progressing towards something, but of course, you never get there. After a certain point, your health starts to mysteriously drain. In one previous attempt with a helicopter, it started to make engine failure beeping sounds despite not having any actual physical damage. Whereas in GTA 5 you simply get eaten by sharks, here you just start dying with no real explanation. I suppose if Niko is swimming, then maybe it could be hypothermia that drains your health. But in helicopters or boats, this explanation just doesn't work. You are forced to make a U-turn before it's too late, and then take a long trip back to the city. There's no other way around it. Either you die for no apparent reason, or your attempts to escape the city are utterly defeated as the game forces you to turn back. Repeatedly using the health cheat or activating God mode will only have you moving towards the abyss forever, going nowhere and towards nothing. You're stuck here. Probably it's overthinking it, but it's like the city itself has you trapped inside it. It knows you'll be back, and even in death you can't escape, as you'll magically wind up being spawned here again. Yeah, I get it, it's just the way the game is designed, but looking at it in this way makes it seem a lot more like purgatory, or even hell itself, given that one definition of hell could be a place you can't escape from. So many of the buildings in Liberty City, the streets, the alleyways, and a lot of the interiors of the few enterable buildings all give this ominous and very unwelcoming vibe. You get the impression that they put a lot of effort into making much of the environment seem totally hostile, like you're not supposed to be there. At times, in certain isolated places, it better resembles the post-apocalyptic landscapes of Fallout rather than a bustling city that is supposed to be populated with the living. Everything is in disrepair and feels like this derelict ghost town, particularly if you were in the right weather conditions. These places would be the perfect setting for some real survival horror. It comes as no real surprise then, when a bit of investigation into the game files shows evidence of an unused zombie minigame that the developers eventually scrapped, called Z Resurrection. Honestly, they wouldn't have had to change basically anything if the zombie survival mode took place in a few of these locations. They're already the ideal setting. One particular area that sums up a lot of this post-apocalyptic atmosphere is this place. Some kind of dock area. There's this big, abandoned boat that's been left there to rot. It looks like it's been there for years, just accumulating dust. Do people just leave boats around like this? Well, in Liberty City they certainly do, as it's not the only abandoned boat that's there with no explanation. Back at the docks, we have to be quite careful not to fall between the gaps in the wooden planks that have seemingly been created through years of neglect. We stumble upon piles of trash, various computer parts, and other junk just scattered around. It really does feel like we're in the wasteland here. But then, we see a small glimmer of life, something that from a distance seems to not totally be forgotten. It's an auto shop with a permanent open sign. When we get a bit closer, however, we start to see what looks like a building that might fall down given a few strong gusts of wind. Where is everyone? It seems so barren, aside from the suspended car that looks like it might have recently had work done on it. On the other side of the building, there are these pretty ironic-looking signs which advertise that the shop is licensed, officially registered, meets all of the regulations, and so on. Meanwhile, the place doesn't even have any bloody doors or a gate to keep the car secure. Parks, playgrounds, and fun fairs, all totally left to rust, with broken swing sets, crooked equipment, dodgy and dangerous rides. Whilst these places aren't the only ones that have been abandoned in the game, it's interesting to note that these are all the places where you would typically see children and families playing and having fun. Aside from the odd, usually quite dark reference to children in the game, the environment makes it very clear that here, children do not exist. It reminds me of a pretty brilliant sci-fi movie I saw a couple years before GTA 4 came out, called Children of Men, with the premise of that movie basically being that for a couple of decades, no children have been born in the world. Liberty City certainly resembles such a reality. Now, of course, there aren't any kids in the game because how would that even work? They couldn't play any role in the story of the criminal underworld. You couldn't have them walking around the city or really being present at all. Unless you made them invincible or something like in Fallout 3, but that would only make the game less realistic with no real benefit. So I get it. Obviously there are no kids. But why do all of these places have to be so conspicuous and just so out of place? Why not just make normal looking playgrounds and an amusement park? And if that causes some kind of continuity issue as they'd be unused, then why even bother making them in the first place? I would argue that the writers and developers used this discrepancy in what is otherwise a fairly realistic simulation of the world to try and communicate something through the environment. All of this immediately reminded me of GTA 3, where in junkyards you can come across these rusty, abandoned school buses. These are effectively the only reference to the existence of children in the game, and they're lying there, completely dead and forgotten in a junkyard. It seems that in GTA 4, they aim to expand and develop this creepy aspect of Liberty City from GTA 3 by creating the same effect on a much bigger scale, with all the other places which are supposed to be for children. It comes across as some kind of symbol or metaphor, that Liberty City isn't just a crime-ridden hellscape of a place where children and families shouldn't be, but also that innocence itself is simply not present in this place. It's condemned, cursed even, just like the world in Children of Men. Probably the most well-known glitch in the game is the swing set of death, which takes place in exactly this kind of abandoned playground area near some apartments. The swings themselves are totally unused and unusable. One swing of a set is wrapped around the top of the frame, whilst the other is literally broken, with a part of the seat wrapped around the frame and hanging off of it, with the other part of the seat on the ground and one of the chains just hanging there. Touching, hitting, or interacting with the swing set in any way makes this kind of thing happen. It shakes and almost twitches in a very sudden and violent way. The chains start moving about in this circular fashion. Everything sort of jolts and causes these cracks in the ground to form, and pieces of concrete or whatever to kind of just fly away. It's insane, and anyone that is unlucky enough to touch them gets a rather rude awakening. Most think of this as just a hilarious glitch, which it totally is. But is there an actual purpose that it serves? Is it really just a developer oversight that they decided not to patch because people found it funny? They're never used by any of the NPCs in the game, they just sit there, waiting for their next victim. Also, why does this insane car catapulting bug happen just in this particular spot? It's worth noting that the swing sets of death are not the only swing sets in the game. Here, we can see the exact same ones in a totally different area, curiously organized so that anyone swinging on them would probably hit anyone in front or behind them. They are the same sets with the same broken seats and screwed up chains, and yet any interaction with them is pretty normal. They rattle and shake a bit when you hit them with the car, but nothing crazy whatsoever. This is another piece of evidence that points to the fact that the swing sets of death could be intentional in some way, as it's not like they couldn't have a swing set with all its weird physics properties working elsewhere. It could just still be the result of complex physics elements conflicting with each other though. The swing set has a lot going on, the frame, the chain and seats, but the thought that this could be on purpose is a pretty unsettling one. The imagery of this abandoned yet unexplainably murderous swing set seems like the perfect fuel for a creepypasta, as if there's some ghost children haunting it and punishing anyone who comes too close. And yet, it's just there in the game, never patched, never really explained. The most mysterious and weird place in this section is ironically named Funland, where absolutely no fun takes place, ever. Well, maybe sometimes. We're first introduced to Funland when Niko takes Michelle out on their first date, and his grand idea is to take her to the fun fair, which Michelle ostensibly agrees is a good idea. If you play through the date a few times and go towards the carnival, Michelle gives these differing, inconsistent explanations about why they can't go there.
You know, the carnival isn't open this time of year. I don't know if it would pass safety regulations anyway. The carnival's closed, Niko. I think some big developers have bought it or something. Hey, Niko, the carnival isn't open. I think they're going to turn it into a big Las Venturas-style theme park.
Since we know in retrospect that Michelle is working for the government, and the very nature of her relationship with Niko is based on lies and manipulation, is there something she knows that we don't? I'm almost certainly making this deeper than it actually is, and maybe Michelle is just giving different guesses each time. In any case, let's take a closer look at the very bizarre Funland. Right off the bat, the gate looks like the entrance to a concentration camp. Everything is derelict and forgotten, just gradually becoming a heap of scrap metal. There are some curiously named games, Shoot Your Load and the Diddy Ride. One of the rides clearly shows areas from San Andreas along with the Hydra, which in contrast looks idyllic and nice compared to where we are now. The views from the Liberty Eye are pretty gloomy and underwhelming, and even on the roller coaster, it looks like the biggest thrill would have been from whatever crimes you could see being committed on the streets that are visible from it. Again, there are no kids to enjoy Funland, so why is it possibly still here? The only activity that happens here at all is during a mission from the Ballad of Gay Tony, where the place is used by gangsters to move drugs around, concealing them in these stupid penguin container things. During that mission, we can see rides being brought back to life, which really doesn't do much to make the place look any less haunted. The last detail I'll mention is this: a weird, what appears to be an actual photo of a woman at a ticket booth. This looks like half of a mistake, but also half of a curse. It just seems out of place, almost intentionally so, creating this unnerving vibe of seeing something fake or synthetic, like the whole place has been created with the appearance of being real, but really, it's just a facade. It couldn't have been that hard to edit her out of a texture. Now we're left with this jarring image. This serves as a great segue into my next section. As with any game, there are only so many gigabytes and megabytes of textures and files that make up everything you see. So despite GTA 4 being insanely detailed compared to previous games, you'll inevitably come across little things that just stick out a bit if you look at them too closely. That blurry image of the woman at the ticket booth at Funland is a prime example. It goes without saying that this is just one of the limitations of a game that's ultimately made up of files, and probably not in any way intentional. But if you're anything like me and have a habit of making a massive deal about every little thing, then it can really add to the creepy atmosphere of the game. It gives me this vibe of there being a crack in reality, or a glitch in the simulation. A sign that what you're looking at is artificial, which of course it is. But with how detailed and alive so much of a game feels, it makes it that much more strange. There are many examples of these cracks in the simulation, like blurry 2D textures trying to represent the interior of stores, the same abandoned sofa in the same condition, with the same 2 planks of wood laying on it, the copied and pasted big clumps of trash with the same computer monitor, the same keys missing from the same keyboard, and so on. These feel like cracks in the simulation, and in essence they are cracks in the simulation, which accidentally reinforce this vibe that we're trapped in some kind of inescapable dystopian purgatory, or something like that. Anyway, moving on. Not long after this game was released, people online began talking about this really unsettling experience in the subway. They claimed there was a rat-humanoid hybrid creature that ate homeless people and lived in the subway. They called him the Rat Man. But from everything I've seen, there's really no actual evidence of his existence. This is in the category of internet urban legend, similar to Bigfoot or aliens in San Andreas, which all turned out to be mods or just players misinterpreting normal game sounds. People spent hours spooking themselves out running around the pitch-black subway looking for the Ratman, to no avail. I recommend reading the GTA Myths fandom page on Ratman to get the full story, but since it's not real, I want to talk about the place where the Ratman was supposed to exist instead. The subway is very creepy, possibly the scariest place in the game, and that shouldn't really be a surprise. What else would you expect? Subways are creepy by their very nature. It's why this worked so well in Fallout 3. In GTA 4, it's no different. It feels so isolated and claustrophobic, at least until a train comes and almost kills you, before very quickly leaving you alone once again. You feel like someone or something could be chasing you at any time. The subway system seems to just go on forever and ever, like you're stuck in some hellish loop. Eventually, though, you do come across these larger areas, congregated by homeless people. The graffiti here is of a much higher standard, and you start noticing these symbols that will pop up again and again throughout the game. There are mattresses, scrapped cars, shopping carts, random boxes, and fires to keep people warm. The homeless people gathered deep into the metro tunnels is also a throwback to those really unsettling and unexplained tramp people standing around a hidden package inside the totally purposeless tunnel in GTA 3, armed with Molotov cocktails and not reacting to anything, like some bizarre end-of-the-world anarchist club. In GTA 4, the metro people exhibit similar imagery, as they also just stand around the barrels of fire for seemingly all eternity. But here, the realism is obviously a lot clearer. Relief washes over you in an awesome wave once you do eventually make it back to the surface and out of the tunnels. Yes, the darkness of the metro tunnel is an important part of a major mission in the game, as a way to escape the cops. So, just like the abandoned Sprunk factory and some of the interiors of buildings and missions, the creepiness and the mystery is actually kind of dispelled once you've played through the story and understand the context and what function it serves in the game. But after those missions, these places are still there, still accessible, which is where they get kinda creepy. The final place I'll discuss for now is the Statue of Happiness. Well, the outside of it, at least. It needs to be stated first, before any further discussion, that the Statue of Happiness is highly satirical and contains a few obvious, but again, entirely coincidental, references to politicians and certain video game controversies. The irony is pretty transparent in the statement from an in-game website that claims it's the biggest symbol of the American dream, and it was built by the French. Our first impression of the statue isn't that strange, and the hidden aspects of it aren't yet apparent. Like most things, it looks almost quite nice and beautiful from a distance, whether that's passing it by during the intro to the game or looking at it through the binoculars. Even when you get to Happiness Island, the true nature of the statue is still pretty obscured. Walking around, you'll find various picture stands which display these photos of the statue for sale. It looks quite aesthetic and pleasant based on these images, and fairly similar to the Statue of Liberty, just with a bit of a smile. You're required to put some effort into violating various air traffic laws to get a closer, truer look at the statue. And this is where it immediately is shown to be rather grotesque looking, in stark contrast to the way it looks in photos and from a distance. Perhaps these images of a statue are from an unfinished beta version, but the quite dramatic difference in appearance makes me think there could be some intentional message behind it. As if they're trying to communicate that the appearance of it from postcards and the momentary glances of tourists is an illusion. They only get a quick glimpse of it, and those far away can only see some idealized version. This can never come close to the reality of what's there. Those who are up close and personal will see it for its true ugliness, and the illusion, along with your hope, is shattered. The reality is only viewable by those who are already trapped here for long enough, and are brave or insane enough to really see the truth up close, and by that time, it's probably too late. There's something intensely sinister about how the face looks up close compared with far away. It reminds me a lot of the face of the moon in Majora's Mask, constantly looking down at us, knowing that we cannot escape it. Now that we're close enough to see what it really looks like, we can turn to the inscription that the statue is holding, which reads, "Send us your brightest, your sharpest, your most intelligent, yearning to breathe free and submit to our authority. Watch us trick them into wiping rich people's asses, while we convince them it's a land of opportunity." Again, we're given this theme of disillusionment with the American dream. We're getting this message that this whole place is some kind of trap.
Is working for a living really that bad?
Then there's the actual orientation and position of the statue. It's facing towards the city itself. This is another intentional difference from the Statue of Liberty, which is facing away from the city and towards the boats entering it, in a way welcoming travelers to this new land that promises liberty and a better life. Since there's an inversion here and Lady Happiness is instead facing away from those coming into the city, and she's perhaps supposed to be a welcoming symbol for those wishing to move towards happiness, we can interpret this to mean that actual happiness is only possible by moving away from Liberty City. I think it's no accident that in practically every cutscene that features the Statue of Happiness, including the introduction where Niko arrives on the boat, it's always facing away. It's a subtle sign that the American dream, if it even exists, is not to be found here. But as I already covered at the beginning of this chapter, there is no escaping this place. You're condemned to always return, whether you give up and come back or die and respawn at the hospital. Adding more credibility to the symbolism here, in what most people consider is the happiest ending, which is still pretty damn depressing, where Kate dies instead of Roman, the statue is now facing us in the cutscenes. The weather is also sunny in this particular ending. In the other, arguably way darker ending, it's raining and the statue is facing away from us once again. While I am by no means finished with discussing the statue, as I still need to cover it in the Easter egg section, I'll mention this one last detail from the outside of it, and that's this really creepy, discordant music box tune that plays when you're in certain positions around the statue. I have no idea if this plays anywhere else in the game, or if it's really coming from some gift shop, or somewhere else I'm obviously missing. But the eerie, broken nature of this sound is very unsettling, fitting with everything else we've covered quite nicely. It's a beautiful melody that's been distorted, in a similar way to this facade of the statue and what it represents also being twisted. Not quite right. To conclude this chapter, let's go back to that room where Gracie Ancelotti was held captive. I wasn't sure exactly where in this video to talk about this, so I'll cover it here as it's worth a closer look. Before we even get into the room, we're greeted by Gracie's cries and moans. Upon walking in and having a look around, a few things stick out. The rather unpleasant graffiti, the weird XXX film that Gordon is transfixed by playing on the TV, which incidentally is the same film playing in the shop that we visit earlier in the game with Dimitri. There's also Gordon's pretty unusual and endless requests for fries.
Where you been? I've been jonesing for some fries for about 5 hours. Niko, some fries would really hit the spot right now. Why don't you make yourself useful and go get me some fries?
Again, the casual nature of it all makes you wonder just how many times Gordon might have done this before. Leaving and re-entering the room also triggers Gordon to say some kind of annoying things.
Have fun out there! There's something you missed? Enjoy your freedom! You forgot something? See you later, man! What are you doing back?
Once you leave and the door closes itself, it's now permanently locked and inaccessible. Like other interiors from the game's story, however, we can clip ourselves back into it, except now Gracie and Gordon have obviously vanished. Liberty City has a bunch of wacky and wonderful people inhabiting it, and Niko has the chance to encounter some pretty interesting characters, to say the least. A few of these people are those you've already encountered, and possibly spared, from the main story, whilst others are just totally random strangers. They all have one important thing in common though, which is that they all need Niko's help with something. This invariably leads Niko to getting a lot more than he bargained for. The first depraved stranger is Jeff, who is clearly paranoid and has some marital issues that he needs help with. He first asks you to gather evidence against his wife, who he believes is having an affair, leading to Niko going into a cafe, spying on her while she sits with another man, and eventually taking photos as evidence. This is already quite concerning, but it doesn't hold a candle to what unfolds later. If you want to prevent some pretty gruesome stuff and speedrun Jeff's missions, you can just go mental and kill his wife. Doing the mission normally, Niko sends the photos to Jeff, who then goes crazy over the phone. After 10 days, Niko then gets a call out of nowhere from Jeff, who's asking for help again, this time in an underground car park. You arrive to find a pretty distraught Jeff, who reveals something quite dark.
She had an accident in the kitchen.
What kind of an accident?
Oh, the kind of accident where you stab yourself 50 fucking times with a kitchen knife? You fucking whore.
You then are tasked with getting rid of the body and the car, which, hey, Niko agrees to because money. This mission is now the second throwback to the GTA 3 mission, where you must dispose of a dead mafia member in the trunk of a car. And just like the mission with Manny, this iteration is also far, far darker. You actually feel complicit in a very twisted crime, which, of course, you are. But Niko doesn't really have a choice, as by this point, he's already implicated with the previous stalking mission for Jeff. And also, he can't possibly turn down $5,000. After disposing of the evidence, it seems you are finally done with Jeff and can move on. Well, until you encounter him a third time. Somehow, he's already married to a new woman, and is again paranoid about her having an affair with her ex. Niko is asked to kill her, which he remarkably now doesn't accept, even though cash is on the table. Shortly after, Jeff thankfully gets rather unlucky.
Hello? Is this the police? I'm bloody sorry about this, but I think I've run some poor chap over. He looks dead. Of course I'll hold.
The way the driver can't be bothered being put on hold and drives off is a good bit of dark humor. But apparently, if you can manage to kill the driver before he hits Jeff, then he goes on his merry way and the mission still ends successfully. Personally, I think it's best for Jeff not to walk away. No video like this would be complete without discussing Eddie Lowe. He's unquestionably the most deranged and depraved person you can encounter in the whole game. You find him only very late at night in Alderney City, in an alleyway. He needs Niko's help with dropping off something that's in a bag. Basically, everything about Eddie, from his voice...
It's a silly question, I know, silly question. It's just I was wondering, because maybe that's what makes us different from the animals.
...to his unusual facial expressions, is designed to give you the creeps. Everything he says has this sick undertone to it, and the topics of conversation are more than a little off-putting.
Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be eaten by a shark?
No.
After you help him with this, what was pretty obvious anyway is made clear in the Liberty Tree newspaper, where you learn that a headless corpse of a jogger was found stuffed in a sports bag. One of many victims of an unidentified serial killer that is now pals with Niko. Later, you encounter Eddie again, very late at night of course, but this time Niko is a bit more dismissive with him. After attacking you, if you manage to disarm him and take the knife away, Eddie runs off and you get this quite haunting mission failure message saying, Eddie Lowe is still out there, waiting. Killing him, which is the only rational choice, leads him to being discovered and reported on in the various media outlets of Liberty City, where more details of his crimes come out.
The unnamed serial killer who has plagued Liberty City for months and baffled the police department's nickname division has been found dead, himself seemingly the victim of a murder.
The man who was found with several journals confessing to his crimes appears to have targeted the wrong victim and been killed in a fight.
Of course, it doesn't end there, however. Eddie Lowe has quite an online presence, which shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. First, we've got his criminal record, which desperately requires an update, on the Liberty Police database. He also has a blog, which actually continues to get updated even after his death. That may well be some developer oversight, but it could also mean something deeper. Like, perhaps not Eddie, but someone just like Eddie with his same sick interests is still out there, waiting, posting. Anyway, it gives us some more insight into the inner workings of Eddie's mind, not that we particularly asked for it. As if that wasn't enough, he has a profile on My Room, which lists even more of his crimes and odd views. Now, there's no real mystery with Eddie. It's probably obvious to most players exactly who he is, roughly 9 seconds into first encountering him. Everything is really on the nose. What's more unsettling is that people like Eddie are simply lurking in alleyways and around the city. Not only that, but he has this prolific presence online, practically admitting to everything publicly, and yet he doesn't get caught by the police until Niko finally puts a stop to him. Both Jeff and Eddie are hard for Niko to understand as they're totally insane. Killing is just part and parcel of the only world Niko knows. In both war and the criminal underworld of Liberty City, killing is the norm. But there are at least some rules or some semblance of a purpose behind the killing, despite how senseless it is. Here, Niko is confronted with the insanity that lurks only a little bit beneath the surface of his city. To him, these people are grotesque and incomprehensible. So when faced with someone so deranged like Eddie Lowe, a guy who takes sick pleasure in his crimes, Niko seems to be genuinely disturbed, which is definitely a rare thing in this game. Almost nothing phases Niko. Nothing really gets under his skin, until he meets Eddie. As covered earlier, the whole dating scene in the game is something that I think many players might have overlooked, as I certainly did. You're only required to really go on one date to complete the story, and that's the first date with Michelle. Before I cover the darker aspects of Niko's romantic possibilities, it's worth talking about Michelle a bit more first. As you should already know, Michelle is a federal agent. So this retrospectively makes all of her interactions with Niko really obvious attempts at trying to incriminate him. Even before we find it out, she's not exactly subtle about it.
Do you think they'll try to involve Roman?
I don't think Roman would make much of a criminal.
I guess not. Interesting weather, isn't it?
Very.
Have you killed people with that thing, Niko?
One creepy fact that I learned when revisiting Michelle and actually going on dates with her was what happens when you take her to a bar. As you can see, Niko gets stupidly drunk, but Michelle remains curiously sober. Niko even believes he's been spiked by her.
Why do you always go and get the drinks? If I did not know any better, I would think you were trying to put something in my glass.
Whilst Michelle is disturbingly dedicated to her work, the real crazies that Niko can date are, quite naturally, found on the internet dating site, lovemeet.net. There are quite a few women that can be dated here, and none of them are quite all there. If not outright crazy, they have some pretty major personality flaws. A good example is this one, who you can meet on a crap list, and she even starts a blog about Niko after dating him. In any case, once you're liked enough by these women, they all give you some unique benefit, which I don't know if that makes up for having to spend time with them, but hey, it's at least something. Arguably the best unique girlfriend ability is being able to lose your wanted level of up to 3 stars. The price you pay for this, however, is quite a heavy one. As far as first impressions go, Kiki, who's a lawyer, is quite normal and maybe even a pretty decent person, particularly if you don't get her drunk right away. Apart from really hating being cheated on, she otherwise isn't too worrying. Take her to a bar, though, and things go rather differently.
Who is that bitch? Was she one of your cheap whores? I saw you looking at her. Don't pretend you weren't. You take your other whores there, do you? The place you get them drunk before you have your way with them?
Even on normal dates, she'll start to suddenly and repeatedly bring up her various ex-boyfriends, most of whom are her former clients, aka people guilty of really bad crimes.
This ex of mine, Mitch. I met him when I represented him on this bogus murder charge. I mean, it's just the arresting officer's word against the perps. We found this gun on him. His clothes were covered in the victim's blood. An innocent man with a felony prior doesn't stand a chance.
Jermaine the client?
Client, client, lover, friend, spiritual guru.
What were you appealing?
A triple homicide conviction. There's no way he killed those guys. He's such a big softie.
All your ex-boyfriends seem to be real pacifists.
One in particular, Dorian, doesn't sound like the best guy in the world.
Who is Dorian?
An ex.
Another one? What did he do?
Triple homicide. Well, that was what he was accused of, but it was obviously self-defense. A mother clearly attacked him, and he shot her and her kids.
In self-defense?
It was a conspiracy.
Kiki seems to have some deep-rooted guilt for her privileged upbringing, and this guilt bleeds into her professional and romantic life. She's also massively condescending without any self-awareness to recognize it.
I don't pretend that I wouldn't be selling my ass for crack if I was born in project housing, though.
Not everyone born in the project sells their ass for crack.
It's cool though, because it means Niko can wear any cheap clothes or drive any banged up car and she's actually into it. And it's not just criminals that Kiki has dated in the past, as you eventually learn.
Don't you find that when you're getting close to someone, you just want to be with them the whole time? Or if not, at least know where they are all the time?
Not really.
This ex of mine,
Is this another one of your clients?
No, This was my professor at law school. He had the gall to accuse me of stalking him.
So she's a certified stalker with a long list of murderous ex-boyfriends. Does it get worse? Yes. Yes, it does. After dates, Kiki will send some really needy text messages, which aren't a big deal, but ignoring her for a little while, or simply just doing other stuff in the game, will trigger her to call you out of nowhere demanding to know where you are.
Niko! Where are you? I need to know now.
Fourth side.
Great! Wait there and I'll come see you. I need you, Niko.
This isn't cool, Kiki. Don't come find me. I'll call you later.
Kiki is both paranoid that Niko is cheating on her, as well as totally possessive over him, and she doesn't take getting dumped too well either.
Kiki, sorry about this, but I can't see you anymore. To be honest, you kinda freak me out.
Damn it, Niko. You don't have to rub my face in it. I hate you for how you make me feel. I think I love you. Help me.
Shortly after dumping her, you'll receive one of a few different texts. These include, "Who is she?" "I still love you," and this one, which I'd rather not read out loud. On one occasion, I dumped her and decided to clear my head with a bit of a rainy drive. Then I saw a lady who seemed a bit underdressed for the weather, so I offered her a ride home. Suddenly, I got the text from Kiki saying, "What does she have that I don't have?" And I began to panic. Was she following me? She lives in Algonquin, so how can she be here? Is it her connections that give her eyes and ears all over the city? I ditched the girl and looked around all over the place wondering where she was and how she knew. But it was probably just poor timing. And no, it doesn't end there. If you really feel like triggering Kiki, call her up for a date, cancel or stand her up, and then go date other girls. At first, she might not take it too badly, but that will soon change. At certain times, after leaving another girl's house, I'd find the car that I parked outside clearly vandalized. Sometimes it's missing its hood or a door, and other times one of your wheels will just fly off when you drive down the street. I never managed to make this happen, but if you go to certain places with another girlfriend, Kiki can actually be seen popping out of nowhere, from alleyways or around the corner, yelling and threatening the girl you're with. Looking through the game files, I found a lot of dialogue that is heard in different situations, and they all revolve around the same kind of theme.
Why are we leaving? Do you have to get back to some cheap whore or something? Why are we stopping? Have you got to run to some cheap whore? Can't you even finish bowling with me? Are you that keen to get off with some other whore? I bet you finish the games you start with your other whores. I can tell your mind has been on your other cheap whores all night, Niko. Shit. Add insult to fucking injury, Niko. Sorry, I'm not one of your cheap whores, okay? So you think I'm cheap like your other whores. Thanks a lot, Niko.
Okay, then.
I guess you had time to stop fucking your other girls and pick up the phone, huh, Niko? God, I've got low self-esteem. So you expect me to help you when you're out with your cheap whores instead of me? Sorry, Niko. Maybe prison will help you be faithful.
Sorry, Kiki. I can't right now. I hope you get home safe.
You make me sick, Niko. If you'd rather fuck one of your cheap bitches than pick me up, that's fine. Don't leave me. Don't you ever leave me. Never, never, never.
Chill the fuck out.
Since Kiki doesn't take rejection very well, and she causes Niko a lot of issues, I decided to find a different way to let her go. This video has already included many references to the in-game internet to provide more details on characters and places, but we really haven't even scratched the surface on what it has to offer. It's probably the first, and definitely one of the only tastefully done simulations of the actual internet that we've seen in a game. It's like an entire virtual world that's accessible within the already virtual world of the game. I still haven't come close to reading through everything that exists here, which is saying a lot for such an old game. At the same time, it's basically entirely satirical and hilarious. It reads like one huge article by The Onion, parodying the real internet. The spot-on parodies of early social media, blog sites, online dating, and even news pages are all just so well crafted. The amusing little pop culture references, subtly and strategically placed within dating profiles, is pure genius, but might easily go over the head of anyone that didn't grow up in the 2000s. The emails, too, are like this ongoing comedy bit throughout the game, with all the totally ridiculous yet somehow accurate spam emails, and all the possible funny replies that can be given. Since the internet is so often a source of comic relief in the game, the fact that it also covers some pretty dark subject matter makes it just that much more disturbing, and that is what I'll attempt to cover in this chapter. First, we'll head back to the Liberty Police site, which I've brought up a few times already. Straight away, the logo or emblem for the LCPD seems to be a very obvious parody of another police department based in New York. Instead of the scales of justice, we have the scales of donuts and coffee, which is stereotypically a big focus for the police rather than actually being committed to justice. Then we have the rather clear depiction of police brutality in the emblem, something that the NYPD has become quite notorious for. This emblem, along with Francis McCreary at the homepage, paints the picture of the cruel, corrupt, and incompetent police force that we see depicted throughout the game. Adding to the incompetence is the fact that at the bottom of the page, we see that there's a link to the police database. It appears to be locked, and trying to access it gives a warning to anyone without the authorization. And yet, we can simply click it and access it immediately without any issues, being able to view everyone's detailed record. A lot of the names here are recognizable from the main story of the game, and others are not. This name, Jill von Crastenburg, is referenced throughout the game, though she's never actually seen. She's clearly gotten into some trouble in the past couple of years, and there's a notable reference to a certain kind of tape featuring her. The disturbing part, if you haven't already noticed, is her age. It gets worse from here. If we head to Electric Tit, which is some kind of parody of both Live Leak and maybe World Star Hip Hop, we actually find that the video in question was uploaded to the site. Dip Dap Debbie seems to be the only commenter concerned about Jill in the comment section, with other people claiming the video is fake. Jill von Crastenburg is a walking parody of the Paris Hiltons of the world at that time. Every tiny detail of her life is reported on, like her using the bathroom or gaining half a pound. It's all totally absurd, and there's constant news about her antics. Of course, it wouldn't be complete without a certain type of celebrity tape, which was so crucial for creating fame around other vacuous real-world celebrities whose only skill or talent seems to be getting attention. Her age is obviously the disturbing part, but maybe it's a massive exaggeration and joke, aimed at how young and stupid a lot of these celebs are. Or maybe it's highlighting the sickness of the public and tabloids, who are youth-obsessed, and don't actually care about the real human behind the headlines. Crastenburg makes a return 5 years later in GTA 5, and her picture on Bleeder from that game's internet seems to show a woman well into her 40s, despite apparently only being 18. I like to think the age thing was all just another fake headline, aiming to create another layer of sensationalism and satire in an already totally insane situation. But her prematurely old appearance could also show that she's just aged well beyond her years, because of a stressful, media-hungry life she's lived, again shining a spotlight on the public obsession with youth and headlines. I really don't quite know what to make of it, but it's all just a bit unsettling. I get the sense that Rockstar was really just pushing for controversy with all this, while walking a very delicate line, trying not to be too obscene. But we're not quite done yet. I also stumbled upon this utterly twisted site, which is solely set up in order to aid James Pedeston, a former but now disgraced radio host, in his legal defense, aka bribing the judge. So far, the campaign is not doing too well, as he's only gotten $23. But what did he actually do? Well, you can read the details here. The site even admits that Pedeston has exhibited some pretty alarming behavior around, you guessed it, kids. He clearly leveraged his position as a famous radio host who traveled around the world to report on different locations, getting involved in misunderstandings on more than one occasion during his adventures. He now finds himself in a Bali jail, where it's suggested he rather enjoys the company of his male cellmates. By far, the darkest section of the site is the Messages of Support tab, where it's fairly clear that his former victims from various impoverished countries are posting messages which only incriminate him even further. Either that, or he's being trolled. Despite the outrageously dark subject matter here, I couldn't help but laugh just reading through this stuff. It's part of the genius of the writing in this game, almost as if they challenged themselves to make a joke out of the worst stuff possible. Throughout the whole internet, every paragraph or even sentence always has some punchline embedded inside of it. So yeah, while the whole concept of this site's existence is unsettling, the way they've executed it is still pretty comical. And that brings us to our next concerning site, Little Lacy Surprise Pageant, which indeed involves a bit of a surprise. The description of the site says it's for children's beauty pageants, so what if you're curious or insane enough to click it? I think it's best just to show you.
Units, please respond. We have a sexual deviant attempting
We suddenly hear the police radio calling for Niko's arrest, and we see a screen with the LCPD emblem, along with a pretty frightening warning that our IP address has been catalogued, along with the words, "We see it all, we know it all." Clicking on that leads us to the LCPD website. Upon exiting the computer, we find ourselves with an immediate 5-star wanted level. Armed police, helicopters, and SWAT teams then hunt Niko down like the sick deviant that he is. These sites are probably the craziest ones that reference children, but honestly there's even more which I haven't covered. Babiesovernight.com, another hysterical site advertising steroids for your kids. But I'm already 12,000 words into this video, so let's just keep it moving. Another genre of websites that is both creepy and hilarious is the conspiracy theory sites. First, we have Area 53 site, which is a page typed out by yet another former radio host who has been shut down or forced off the air, promising to return in 10 years. It's all just this string of consciousness, nonsensical amalgamation of different conspiracy theory ideas, like Y2K and Nostradamus predicting robots taking over the future. The page is dated at the end of 1999. The skull-like face pictured on the site contains what looks to me like the doomsday clock as its eye, with the time displayed as 1 second to midnight. On the doomsday clock, midnight represents Armageddon, or the end of the world, and the closer to midnight it is, the closer we are to the end. Of course though, Y2K never happened, so is the end really that close? According to one of the Manic Street Preacher's t-shirts, it's at least quite close. And then we have liesdamnlies.net, a completely batshit forum where people post the most unhinged, psychotic ideas and theories. At the introduction, we again see a humorous and cleverly worded reference to another real-world aliens-obsessed cult that you might have needed to live through the 90s to remember. The other usual stuff is all there. Alien satellites, mass surveillance, sacrifices, the government poisoning us. You know, essentially any random Facebook comment section in 2025. One characteristically odd poster seems really concerned about people with mullets. This gets more bizarre as we look at another thread from a European poster who believes that UFO bases and aliens are being kept underground and hidden by the government. He mentions that he heard weird noises coming from underground whilst in Liberty City. A commenter named Barcode jokingly tells him that it's just the subway, but then asks whether he has a mullet, followed by an awkward ha-ha. Scrolling down the comments, we read one from a guy in Vice City who's found a report in the news that Barcode, the earlier commenter, was found murdered behind a subway, and he was last spotted with 2 guys who had mullets. Now I'm starting to believe the mullet conspiracy theory might actually be true. The longer you read through these sites, the more you start to feel like you're going crazy yourself. When you're not laughing, that is. It's beyond eerie the way they've created these really accurate impressions of conspiracy theory sites and forums upon a quick glance. And then as always, it becomes more comedy once you actually read through it properly. They're funny depictions of ultimately something which is, again, really dark and dangerous in the real world. The next site is slightly different, and that's whattheydonotwantyoutoKnow.com. It looks like another totally absurd conspiracy theory site at first, but it turns out to be a rather helpful resource for finding all the collectibles, strangers, and other content scattered around the map. It's quite an ingenious way of creating an in-game guide without breaking the immersion. We see the odd federal agent trying to incriminate people, and our old friend Eddie Lowe makes an appearance in one of the comments. While I'm going to end the crazy sites section here, believe me, we have not covered all of it yet. There's just far too much content to cover here on the game's internet, so we'll move on to the emails. The emails you get and can send in the game are, just like the websites, pretty damn funny. Giving negative replies to Brucey or Roman in particular is quite comical. As usual, it's a funny take on the real-world experience of emailing. There are some fairly normal or serious emails that can be exchanged, but even these tend to have a bit of comedy present in them. Because they're usually fairly lighthearted, it again makes it all the more unsettling when we see some that are rather dark. You should already be familiar with the storyline with Dwayne, but just to add context, here's a bit of an overview. After Niko starts making connections and doing work in Algonquin, we get to know Playboy X and end up becoming a bit of an errand boy for him. Very shortly after working for him, we learn about his old mentor, Dwayne, who is coming out of prison after being sentenced for quite a long time. Once out, Niko starts helping Dwayne re-establish himself and get back at some people. This later results in a conflict and power struggle between Dwayne and Playboy. And long story short, Playboy asks you to kill Dwayne. But in the Holland play, you're given the option as Dwayne then asks Niko to stop Playboy, who he suspects wants him dead. As with other decisions you make in the game, there's no real right or wrong. No black and white, only different shades of grey. Both Dwayne and Playboy are fairly terrible people, but the game sets up Dwayne as the more sympathetic character, who Niko sees himself in, whereas Playboy is presented as cowardly, insufferable, and ignorant.
The amount of... What you call dollars in Russia? I'm Playboy X, motherfucker! Fresh off the boat, punk!
I think you might want to look at the map, Playboy. Dubai isn't in Africa.
He's very unlikable, and Dwayne is quite the opposite. If you kill Dwayne, Playboy cuts contact with you entirely despite being the one who ordered the hit. Whereas killing Playboy instead opens the door for a pretty nice friendship with Dwayne. And yeah, you get his dope penthouse too. Now with that out of the way, we can get into the emails. If you choose to keep Dwayne alive, the friendship that you have with him is initiated by a rather poorly written email that he sends to Niko, where he talks about not having many friends and being lonely. Again, if he's alive, you can reply positively or negatively to this email in order to either start or reject a friendship with him. However, the interesting thing about this email is that it's actually sent before you're given the choice to either kill Dwayne or Playboy. So what happens with this email if you kill Dwayne? As shown, the positive reply has Niko saying that he's sorry. This is already quite depressing and dark. The idea that Niko is probably filled with regret now, having killed someone who reached out to be his friend. The negative reply, on the other hand, cuts a bit deeper. Niko types, "Sounds like you were a pretty lonely guy. Maybe what happened was for the best." I think the coldness of this reply pretty much speaks for itself. It gives us a little bit of insight into Niko's psyche and how one might justify doing these terrible things to themselves. We know from more than one occasion, Dwayne is a very unhappy person. From the police database, we can see he was placed on watch for much of his sentence, and he makes references on quite a few occasions to the fact that he's not the happiest guy in the world after being sent to prison and effectively losing everything. If you choose to kill him, he doesn't bother to defend himself. Niko becomes just another person who betrayed him, and he doesn't even care anymore. Part of Niko's role in Dwayne's life could be to help him feel better, and give him a bit of purpose. This is what Niko starts to do in missions for him, and it's evident that Niko tries to cheer Dwayne up when the two hang out together. All this makes the choice to kill him, then send this negative email, arguably the darkest decisions you can make in a story. I think the purpose of being able to send these emails, which would otherwise be pointless as the recipient is already dead, is to make you think twice about the choice you made, motivating you to play through the story a second time to see what the result of the other choice is. Again, genius stuff. After finding out you could reply to Dwayne's email after he dies, I decided to go through the game without replying to any of Roman's or Niko's mom's emails to see if something similar would happen, potentially after the ending where Roman dies. Towards the end of the game, you have a bunch of emails from Roman relating to the upcoming wedding and other notable parts of the story, as well as emails from Niko's mother. All of these emails can be replied to, with the exception of the most recent one where Niko's mother talks about the wedding. Oddly, once Roman dies, you can reply to none of the emails you were previously able to respond to, from Roman or Niko's mom. There's now no option. Moreover, all emails mentioning Roman's wedding are now deleted. Totally wiped. Niko's mother's email mentioning Florian is also curiously missing now too. I suppose this could be because all the replies would have to be changed in the event of Roman dying, so the developers perhaps thought that disabling the ability to reply would be a better idea than creating brand new responses. But that doesn't quite explain why the emails mentioning the wedding, or Florian, would be deleted, whilst the others are still there. Maybe Niko just couldn't bear to see them in his inbox, as he would only be reminded of the terrible events that just took place, so he just deleted them himself. Despite there not being any new possible replies to any of the emails following Roman's death, the writers seem to have initially planned for an email to be sent to Niko in the event of Roman being killed, and this email is from Niko's mother. For one reason or another, this was not used in the final version of the game, and so you'd never actually see it playing the game. Although scrapped, it does still remain hidden in the game's files. It took quite a bit of digging to locate this in the game's text files, but after a little while, whilst going through lists of files for the emails exchanged between Niko and his mother, I eventually did stumble upon it. Here's what it says. Word in the village is that Roman was killed on wedding day. I know it is true, as I checked on internet. My son, my heart is broken. Please leave evil place. Please go somewhere safe. Please do not caught up in madness. Please do not become statistic. I can't speculate as to why this email was never used. Perhaps it's just unnecessarily dark and doesn't really need to be in the game. Maybe they thought Milica being silent and not saying anything would be even more effective at highlighting the tragedy of this ending to the story. Throughout the game, Milica's emails are pretty heartbreaking to read. Typed out in fairly accurately broken English, she clearly worries a lot about her son and hopes he's doing okay. Niko always has nice things to say to her, and even if you choose to reply to her negatively, which usually makes Niko's replies totally savage, the response here is still positive and effectively the same as what the positive response would be, though he'll typically talk badly about Roman. All these details make that unused email just all the more haunting. There are 2 Easter eggs in GTA 4 that I want to dedicate this chapter to. Yes, there may well be many others scattered throughout the game, but these 2 are the ones which are by far the most disturbing to me, and for reasons I'll make clear later, they tie in with other details and themes I've already covered. For the first Easter egg, we're taking yet another look at Dwayne, as there are actually 2 related Easter eggs for either choosing to kill him, or to instead kill Playboy, and gain access to Playboy's, but actually Dwayne's, property. As already covered, choosing to kill Dwayne is not the greatest choice, and arguably one of the coldest decisions Niko can make, but it's only by going down this pretty dark path that we're led inside Dwayne's apartment, and get to see it in all its horror up close and personal, unlike in the cutscenes where we're only given a brief look inside with a limited number of angles. Before we head inside, let's quickly look at the outside. Outside the apartment, on one of the walls we see a bunch of graffiti, and among the scribbles we can see the name Claude. You're probably already aware, but Claude Speed is the name of the silent protagonist from GTA 3, which, again, takes place entirely in Liberty City. It's important to keep in mind that before Dwayne was sent to prison, he was a pretty important figure in the crime world of Liberty City in the 1990s, which is also the same period of time that GTA 3 is set in. Venturing into the building, we're given an immediate and not exactly warm welcome by his homeless-looking roommate who seems to be really into baseball, despite his rather low batting average. Just past the door we went through to enter the apartment, we get another ominous greeting. Welcome to Hell, which is written on the wall in pretty big writing. Snooting around some more, we see that Dwayne's apartment is truly the stuff of horror, and living here might well be akin to hell. It looks as though he's utterly lost his mind. Newspapers with deranged scribblings are scattered all around. Everywhere you look, in every corner of every wall in every room, the place is a total mess. It looks like a crack den, and may well be one given the crack pipes scattered just about everywhere. There's blood all over the floor in one room, black curry kumquat yogurt, cigarette butts, empty beer cans, banana peels, just all kinds of trash and mess strewn everywhere. You get the sense that whoever lives here is deeply tortured. After killing Dwayne, who again doesn't put up a fight and seems to just accept it, we get the call from Playboy telling Niko how cold he is, despite Playboy being the one asking him to do this. At this point, we're just in the apartment alone, and you get the sense that the game almost wants you to look around, that there's some message somewhere waiting for you as a reward for being such a heartless bastard. And then we see it. On another wall near to where Dwayne was executed, more graffiti with references to other GTA characters. Rest in peace is above and beside Claude. Does this mean that Claude Speed is dead? The chaotic and jumbled state of the graffiti makes the message unclear. We can't know for sure if this rest in peace is in reference to Claude, or perhaps one of the other characters like this Fonzo guy. Tommy is also referenced in the graffiti, as well as Carl. We know that CJ spent time in Liberty City, but did he ever come back? We don't know where Tommy Vercetti ended up either. It seems most likely that Dwayne would have known, or at the very least known about Claude, given the facts that we do know about the locations and timelines of both characters. It doesn't help provide any clarity that this graffiti that appears inside and around Dwayne's apartment is present elsewhere in the game, like in this weird apartment stairwell type place, opposite one of the game's safe houses, where the manic street preachers are usually giving their psychotic sermons. We again see the same welcome to hell message, and the graffiti referencing Carl, Tommy, and of course, Claude. One variation of this wall writing has a gun pointing towards the names, seemingly drawn by somebody else, giving you the impression that those people mentioned have been or will be hurt, like this is some kind of hit list. But then, upstairs in the same structure, we see the exact same graffiti, except this time, the gun that was pointing towards the names is now pointing away from the names. Again, we're left totally in the dark about what meaning, if any, we should draw from it all. The connection between Dwayne and Claude does not end there, however. Going down the other path offered by the game, and instead killing Playboy, leaves us with a possibility of a friendship with Dwayne, as well as Dwayne's property that Playboy previously lived in. Dwayne makes the point to Niko that he doesn't want to stay in the property because it would only remind him of Playboy, who he was once very close to. But, as we are about to learn, maybe there's someone else Dwayne doesn't want to be reminded of by coming here. Accessing the wardrobe to change our clothes, if we cycle through the options, we see Niko wearing a set of clothes that we never purchased, nor do they even appear in any of the clothes stores for that matter. Anyone who's played GTA 3 will immediately recognize whose clothes these actually belong to, and that is Claude Speed. So not only did we see the reference to Claude on the wall outside of Dwayne's apartment, and the graffiti from inside the apartment implying that he may be dead, now we also find Claude's clothes inside the wardrobe of the property that belongs to Dwayne. These pieces, when put together, make a pretty compelling case that Dwayne didn't just exist in the same circles at the same time as Claude, but that he also might have known him personally, and was close enough to him that he ended up with Claude's clothes in his house. But whether Claude is dead or not is actually still quite a mystery. We're given some signs, but nothing is explicitly stated one way or the other. Dwayne makes no comments if you wear Claude's clothes around him, and although Dwayne shares an awful lot about himself whenever you hang out with him, it seems that Claude, just as with Playboy, is something that he would rather not be reminded of. The fact his name and belongings still exist, but he is never actually spoken about, makes Claude feel like some kind of ghost that haunts Liberty City. Perhaps it's fitting that no one talks about him, given that he was known as the silent protagonist, who never said a single word, unless you count. All this being said, it's more than likely just not as meaningful as I'm trying to make it. It could all simply be a little nod to the previous games, along with some sort of symbolic way of saying that the era of the old 3D games has passed, and in a way, those old characters are dead, as the series has now moved past them. And now we finally come to the Easter egg that I teased at the introduction to the video, so let's head back to the Statue of Happiness. But before we go through that door and up that ladder to take a look, I want to talk just a little bit about what leads up to the discovery of this. In terms of how well hidden this is, well, it's not really. If you're anything like me, then this would have been one of the first places you wanted to thoroughly check out the second you got into a helicopter. The Statue of Happiness is shown to us plenty of times throughout the game, making it a pretty huge point of interest to explore. The final mission even takes place on Happiness Island. It's as if the game wants you to actually poke around here. Inevitably, when you got up to this balcony area, you would have probably tried to go through the doors anyway, though they appear pixelated and, on the surface, seem like any of the other doors, which are similarly undetailed and inaccessible throughout the game. If in the unlikely event that you decided you weren't going to try and go through one of the doors after all, you would have then been greeted by the sign that says, "No hidden content here." Again, the game is almost taunting or daring you into finding this, perhaps knowing that even when you do find it, you still haven't truly found it. And there it is. If you played this game back in 2008, and were maybe younger than you should have been to play it, and then you stumbled upon the side of this after waiting for your older brother to go out so you can get on the PS3 without him noticing, then it's pretty hard to explain that initial confusion, curiosity, and eeriness of it all. It's definitely an image that stuck with me since I first saw it, Regardless of how you first came across this, your first thought more than likely would have been, what the hell am I looking at? Followed immediately by, I wonder what happens if I shoot at it. It bleeds, but it doesn't die. There's no explanation for this. It's just there, this ridiculously grotesque thing they put into the game for seemingly no other reason than to creep you out and leave you scratching your head. It just hangs there, chained up, with these gruesome industrial-looking ventricles. It never stops. It never dies. Just hanging there, suffering, beating in this labored way, almost as if it's against its own will. The sight of this chained-up, beating heart is so incomprehensible and just bizarre that you can only be really left there wondering what the hell is it even there for. More recently, after revisiting the game and DLCs a second time, I found that the game leads you directly to this in the Ballad of Gay Tony. If Luis has won too many of those free shots at Mason at 9, he'll pass out and suddenly wake up hours later in some random area. There's also a chance that after passing out, he ends up right here. His reaction to seeing this place is probably similar to a lot of ours.
Where the fuck is this?
Again, the game clearly wants you to find all of this, whether by placing you here, or through clever hints and other ways of encouraging you to explore the area. It wants you to see this, almost as if to say, go ahead. Now you see it. Is the mystery over? We still have no clue and no idea what it is we're actually seeing. Earlier, I discussed the Statue of Happiness itself, and described what I felt was a big contrast between the way the statue looks from far away compared to up close, and how this could be interpreted as a kind of metaphor for how a faraway, dreamlike, idealized view of this city is in stark contrast to the ugly truth that you can only really see from up close. Here, there's clearly something metaphorical going on regarding the outward appearance of a statue and what's actually inside. The obvious references aside, and the rather frank inscription, which serves as an actually honest message to those coming to the city. On the surface, the statue represents the phony, fake-smiling, out-of-touch politicians that run the show, with perhaps some statement about materialism, commercialism, or, I don't know, the fact that you'll be hooked on caffeine due to the stress and workload of living here. But looking at it from the perspective of a hopeful immigrant who exists inside the GTA universe, it's an attractive symbol that plays on your hopes and dreams, reflecting the view of Liberty City from the outside. It's a superficial, surface-level promise of a happier life, whilst beyond its exterior lies the dark truth. You are enslaved, chained up against your will, and it is your life, your labor, that is the force keeping this diabolical machine running. This isn't the American dream, it's the American nightmare, and the reality for so many that have come to this place hoping for a better life, only to have their life force drained. It's the pursuit of happiness that is used by those in power for their own benefit to exploit those who are desperate. It's really reminiscent of an old Chinese novel that I heard about a long time ago, but now can't really find any information about. Essentially, it's about this huge walled city. Those outside of the city are desperate to get in, but only those who are already inside the city know that it's actually a pretty terrible place. So because of these walls that surround it, those inside want to escape, but they can't, whilst those outside the city wish to get inside as the reality of life there is hidden to them. Another thing that comes to mind for me, which is way more likely to have been a possible influence for putting all of this in the game, is the album artwork for Funkadelic's America Eats Its Young, which is pretty self-explanatory, and quite similar symbolically to how we can interpret the Statue of Happiness and the heart. In an effort to try to better understand the symbolism behind the heart of the city, I came across this reference from the GTA Wikia, claiming that the heart may be based on the story of The Happy Prince by Oscar Wilde. Having skimmed through some different parts of the story online, there are some very clear parallels. Firstly, it seems like too much of a coincidence for the Statue of Happiness to have a heart inside of it, whilst in The Happy Prince, there's also a statue with a heart of lead. Where the script is flipped, however, is that in The Happy Prince, the prince actually weeps for the suffering of the poor and wishes to help them, whereas the Statue of Happiness comes across as a tool for exploitation of the poor and needy, with its heart being some kind of dark way of embodying their exploitation to keep itself alive. Moreover, in The Happy Prince, the sparrow is given an important role in helping those who are suffering, as the prince tasks it to distribute gifts of wealth to them. In what seems like another dark inversion of this, the Statue of Happiness has tons of pigeons all over it, which of course are called flying rats in the game. As you'll already know, these birds serve zero function in the game, aside from being just another thing for you to kill, so that you can rack them up as collectibles. In a way, their only purpose in this world is to become a statistic. I think the final thing I'll add to this section on the heart of the city is that GTA 4 is not the only time it makes an appearance. In GTA 5, if you go to the theater at a certain time, you can watch Capolavoro, or Masterpiece in English. This movie is mainly just a funny parody of pretentious European art movies, but it contains some bizarre and eerie imagery. The engine used to produce it seems to be perhaps a mixture of Red Dead Redemption, GTA 5, and most noticeably, GTA 4. The animations like climbing the ladder, the ragdoll physics when falling, the boat, and the water all look close to GTA 4. You'll recall that to get to the heart you need to climb the ladder. Then the movie has this recurring imagery of a ladder going up into the sky, probably referencing Jacob's ladder. Then, in only a brief glimpse, the same heart of the city is shown. Incidentally, the guy in the movie seems to be having some kind of nightmare, which feels like another nod to the American nightmare that we've talked about. Of course, they could have just done all this and reused some old scenes, all just for a bit of a laugh. Still, it's a hell of an image. This video has admittedly been quite speculative, and at times digressive. Despite that, I'm sure you, or at least some of you, will appreciate that I offered some pretty solid evidence along with all the interpretations. Now I want to try, if it's even possible, to draw together the themes and different things I've presented in the video so far, to try and end with a final conclusion to it all. Niko isn't just our protagonist, he seems to represent the desperate and troubled people who hope for a better future. He's drawn into this place only through a very false and idealized presentation of it from Roman, who secretly just needs Niko to help with his grand plan for... Just as the millions of hopeful immigrants are drawn in by the faraway, dreamlike symbol of the Statue of Happiness, with all its false promises of a brighter future, only to have their lives and energy taken to serve the diabolical machine that keeps it all running. And just like them, he fails to see the obvious ruse he's falling into as he's too desperate to escape. He's also conflicted, and on one hand wishes to genuinely escape his past, whilst on the other hand feels the need to settle the score with his past by coming here. As is typically the case, the past, with all its darkness and horror, follows him over oceans and continents, coming back to haunt him again and again. He, like all the other lost souls who wind up at the shores of Liberty City, now gets to see the awful truth rather than the dream, which can never be realized or ever come true. At every turn, Niko is betrayed, used, and merely acts as a pawn for other people who wish to play their power games. It seems like everyone in this city has tricked Niko and has some secret plan for him which they don't share until he's already in too deep. Michelle fakes an entire romantic relationship solely to get information from him. Dmitri uses him to get Faustin out of the way. He's used by the government to essentially be a no-questions-asked hitman. Francis uses him with the idea that Niko will be helping the good guys, only to find himself doing all of Francis's dirty work. Many of the strangers he meets also trick him into getting involved in situations he would have never agreed to. And again, even his own cousin Roman practically lures Niko into this whole mess by falsely presenting his dream as a reality. It very quickly goes from bad to worse for Niko. He's betrayed and disappointed at every turn, and yet he has nowhere to go. Their hypocrisy, impulsiveness, greed, and evil is now his problem to clean up. He makes brand new enemies on top of the old ones, running into the same situations as before. And just as UL paper says, there is no difference between here and where Niko has left. Running away has caused him to come full circle and land right back in the mess he thought he left behind. He's chased a dream only to wake up in a nightmare. From the psychotic, ranting people on the street to the depraved and deranged people you find yourself getting mixed up with, there's a deep-rooted sickness and evil in this place that cannot be overlooked or ignored no matter where you poke your head. Milica's warning to Niko is really the best advice he can be given. Leave this evil place. Don't become a statistic. And yet, Niko can't leave this place. Not just due to the map limitations that are imposed by the game itself, but also because he can't possibly go back now, as he's gotten himself in way too deep. He's already chosen the game, and now he cannot change the rules. Maybe I've just spent way too long thinking about these things while making this video, but I can't help but feel that the wording of Milica's unused email intentionally mirrors the symbolism of the Statue of Happiness and the heart, as well as the other disturbing details I've presented throughout the video. My heart is broken, just like this corrupted, shattered dream that was never allowed to live. Please leave evil place. The place that tricks you and curses you as soon as you enter it. This place that is so cruel and insane that swing sets and fairs are abandoned with no children or families in sight. Where everyone seems to have an unspeakably dark past. Don't become a statistic, like those unfortunate birds that are scattered all over. Not to mention so many of the game's characters, those you have to kill, and those who may only be killed based on your decisions, including Roman. Even the part where she says she knows it's true that Roman is dead because she read it on the internet. Could that be another subtle reference to how Niko naively believed Roman's emails of how great his life was, and by extension, how all those hopeful immigrants were duped by the false images and depictions of this evil place, which led them directly to it? Okay, I'll admit I'm probably stretching it a bit here. In conclusion, Liberty City is not just some clever satire. It's a sincere and grave warning. Come here at your own peril. Don't be fooled by lies and false promises. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. This is just the way it is. The way it's always been. And the way it's always going to be, depending on whether GTA 7 ever comes out. And with that, it's time to actually end this video. Or is it? Since I've just about given up the idea of making this video a reasonable length, I've decided to throw in this bonus section. Here, I'm just going to show some really odd things that happen, which are almost certainly glitches and not intentionally disturbing. I had to use a trainer in order to get through different parts of the game fast enough to produce all these clips. And as you can imagine, there are a lot of unusual and game-breaking things that happen when you activate God mode, spawn anything anywhere at any time, and when you can teleport to any part of a map with just a few clicks. Since I don't expect many people to actually get to this point in the video, I'll try to keep it brief. When I was messing around in the subway, I spawned some different vehicles from inside it, leading to this absolutely nightmarish bug that caused the subway textures to disappear, flashing on and off. It's kinda creepy. Next, on the final mission, I decided to skip the massive shootout that takes place after chasing one of Pegorino's goons back to the lair. So I teleported to where Dimitri and Pegorino were standing on the staircase. And they were just frozen there, talking to each other in this haunted ventriloquist dummy manner, and appearing to voice the nonsense dialogue of the goons who you're supposed to be in a shootout with. The next part of a mission doesn't actually trigger unless you go back to where you were supposed to enter the building. Another bizarre thing happens when using God mode for the final mission, during the helicopter chase part. If you get hit, which makes your chopper explode, the game gets very confused, and the camera gets stuck inside Dimitri's chopper, where the animation of them making the emergency landing just plays indefinitely after they're teleported somewhere else on the map. Very odd. And I almost forgot about this one, but just noticed it when going through my clips. Basically, in certain situations, some NPCs will just have zero reaction to any of the mayhem around them. Maybe the animations or something are conflicting with something. But yeah, it's also a bit eerie. Finally, this weird bug can be triggered without using any special trainers on that special someone. If you let Darko go free, and then for whatever reason Roman ends up dying, this happens. Niko tries to call up Bernie, and the call just disconnects after a few seconds of silence, as if Niko had something he wanted to tell Bernie, but just simply couldn't go through with it. Typically, freeing Darko and finishing the mission triggers a call, where Niko tells Bernie he let Darko go. So I think this bug is just a result of that call being scripted to happen, but since the mission has failed, there's simply no dialogue. Okay everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you didn't, I'm really sorry. Here are some negative comments that I anticipate getting in the comment section, based on earlier comments I've received elsewhere. So by all means, feel free to use these as a template for yours, but do try to be at least a bit original. Until next time, au revoir.